Well, our guest speaker today, as I said before, is Mike Clayton, a preeminent golf architect in Australia. Not only that, professional golfer, golf writer, golf course designer, advisor. What more can you be? Hey, very good. But Michael was a very successful amateur golfer, a local boy, and won the Australian Amateur in 1978, Michael.
I did.
Ooh, that's a lot. And turned pro in 1981. What a hard task. Won 6 PGA tournaments till 1994 and was 4th in the Order of Merit in 1994. Michael also played on the European Seniors Tour, where in 2009, he was runner-up in the Jersey Senior Classic, losing a 3-hole playoff at Delroy, Cambridge. He represented Australia in the World Cup in 1982 and 1994. Well, and now he's a senior member of the Golf Course and Architecture Group OCCM, which includes Jeff Ogilvy, a local lad, Michael Cocking, and Ashley Mead, and working on a number of golf courses around the world and in particular in Australia. And I encourage you to look at Michael's website, OCCM's website, because of the courses that they're involved in are quite impressive. Given the number of golfers in the room and our background in our lucky area of Australia that we do live in, Mike needs no real introduction. And I look forward to his talk today in respect to the challenges that the game that we all love faces in a tough world as we see. Welcome, Michael, and we look forward to hearing you speak. And if possible, at the end of the day, we might try and ask you a few questions for 10 minutes or so, if that's okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Graham, who knew Max Paul? Anyone know Max Paul? Apart from you? He was the nicest man ever. Was he the nicest man ever?
Well, I didn't like him for business, mate.
he was our I don't think he was ever our manager in the state team, but he was the kind of the junior guru. He was Jack Caulfield and all those boys. He was great. The topic of the Australia's place in the international golf scene, which is interesting, in the future of golf and golf courses. We saw the Australian Open last week in the year that Peter Thompson died, the man who took not a cent of appearance money ever, Jason Day, Adam Scott, Mark Leishman, non-attenders, which is pretty miserable performance by those three guys. Ogilvy, some excuse he forgot to enter, which is not good. But in fairness to Jeff, he's moving home, his kids are finishing school, he's coming out, he instead thought it's just easy to go and play the PGA. So he's out this week, he's got a charity day at the Millionaires Club on Friday for kids charity, and he's playing the PGA. But he gets a pass thing. He's played every one for 15 years, except once when he was at the tour school. But the Open's interesting. You know, it's the most important tournament in the country and the most important title. But we'll see at the Vic Open in February that it's far from being the best tournament in the country. The Vic Open's about to be a European Tour event, possibly an LPGA Tour event, with a mixture of some of the best European Tour players and most of the best women in the world. So why that's turned into a great event, I think, and event's the important word, is become a great event it's never had a great field, certainly not at 13th Beach, but people have enjoyed it. One, because it's for want of a better word, the country, Geelong and Barwon Heads. So people who don't see so much golf in that part of the world, who have to drive to Melbourne to watch the World Cup, for which they can't get in today, interestingly. No spectators on Tuesday, thanks to the US Tour, which is pretty bizarre. But the locals appreciate the tournament, the players love it, the fans can walk on the fairways, it's an interesting mix of men and women, so they've created a great event with almost no field by smoke and mirrors and going back to the days when we were kids, when you could walk on the fairways. So the question for the Australian Open is, how do you make it a great event again? Because the bitch last week from everybody seemed to be there's no Rory or no Spieth or no Tiger or so it's no good. Well, if you're relying on one or two guys who all charge $1 million to turn up to play, and if they don't come, it's no good. Then, you know, what do you do with the event to make it a better event? And Brian Simpson will remember when the Open used to go around the country, city by city. Last time it did that was like Cannup in 1974, 73 at Royal Queensland, 72 at Kionga, 71 at Royal Hobart, Kingston Heath 1970, Royal City 1969, when it went around. So everyone saw the Open, and everyone who lived in Australia had a stake in it because they cared about it, because it came around every 6 years. And it's essentially been in Sydney every year except for 2 since 1975. So why would anyone care about the Australian Open if you never see it? That's an interesting question. I care about it because it's the Australian Open, and I grew up watching. I remember watching Gary play in 1970. Great tournament, great fun, you know, and you dreamed of playing in it and playing well in it. And, but the question is, what do they do with it? Jeff suggested last week in a newspaper, in a magazine column, which it's interesting writing magazine columns. No one would have read it, except that he threw in a couple of lines, one of which said, the Open's a second-rate event and it's badly run. And people screamed at that. And my point was, well, if he hadn't written that, none of you would have read it. And you wouldn't have noticed about the other 1,500 words he wrote about the Open, were actually were worth reading. So his point was, and I can see why people would, it's a very pro and against argument, that levy every golfer $10 or $15 and go back to taking it around the country. So essentially the golfers of Australia fund it. And every time it comes to their city, they get in for free. So if in that 6-year cycle, they pay $60 or $120 or whatever. That's basically buying a ticket every day in the Open for $20 a day. And the promise is that they go to Perth and Brisbane and Sydney and Melbourne and Adelaide, and it goes back to the way it was, which I thought was a great system. But anyway, it's tricky because state governments sponsor Opens, and they want to sponsor them, and they want them in their city. And Emirates wants it in Sydney because they fly to Sydney, and that's what they want. So the Open's kind of lost its control of itself a little. So where it goes from now is going to be interesting. And clearly the key to that is having our 3 best players turn up and play. And without any excuses. And you know, Jason Day's been a serial non-attender in Australia over, how long has he been a pro now? 12 years? So if you don't count the President's Cup and the World Cup, I think he's played. And the Web.com events, when he was on the Web.com tour, they played those at Moon Links. You don't get any points for playing those because he needed to make his money to get exempt on the main tour. So I think he's played 3 or 4 or 5 tournaments maybe in 15 years in Australia, which is disappointing, you would have to say. And so the future of golf and golf clubs is, I'll go to I was going to finish with this, but I'll start with this. I was in China 3 weeks ago. We opened a course, it was a Jack Nicklaus course we'd blown up in Shanghai, because they're not allowed to build new courses in China anymore because the government doesn't like golf. But you can blow up old ones. So we blew an old one up for a company called, Ping An, who are the biggest finance and insurance company in China, owned by a guy called Mr. Ma, who we met. And Mr. Ma, he said, I started my company with a driver and a secretary and me. Any guesses on how many people he employs now? Anyone want to have a quick guess? 1.8 million. Not bad. So anyway, he's selling a global membership. You join his business / club for $20,000, and you can play his network of courses around the world, including Pebble Beach for $60 and Cape Kidnappers for $60. So anyway, we had a dinner with Ernie Els, and Ernie's job was to sell Mr. Ma's concept to a room of Chinese. This was a very good idea and you should invest. And Mr. Mars spoke, and they sold 20,000 memberships. They sold $20,000 memberships. They sold $5 million worth in one night. Not bad. But the funny story was, Ernie Els wears his logo on his shirt. And he opened up the press conference with, I'd like to thank Ernie for being here. Wonderful to see you, Ernie. Thank you for your time. And thank you for when you six-putted the first green at Augusta. Remember when he only six-putted the first green at Augusta? He said, thank you very much, Ernie, for six-putting the first green at Augusta, because every time you putted, my logo on your shirt was on the television. Ernie, in fairness, took it pretty well. But there are 300,000 golfers in China, which is, every statistic you hear about China is, this guy's got 1.8 million employees, and there are cities with 5 million people in you've never heard of, and there are cities that no one lives in, and 300,000 golfers. Imagine if golf took off in China, it would be just crazy. Anyway, so when you talk about the future of golf, are you talking about the future of golf in Australia or in the world or in China or in Asia? But in Australia, it's interesting. I'm an optimist. There are pessimists and optimists in this, but I've always thought I'm an optimist. Perhaps silly, but because I think it's a great game. I think it's fun to play, and people complain that it's difficult, and kids are used to being good at things. You see kids on screens now at 2 years old flicking away and figuring stuff out. Golf's hard. You don't flick at a couple of screens and 15 minutes and figure out how to play golf. You've got to put a lot of time and effort into being good at it, and you've got to put less time and effort into being competent at it, but it's really easy to be bad at it. But, so it's a hard game to play. But I think that's why it's a great game. Anything that's worth doing over the course of your life, and I'm kind of guessing I might be the youngest guy here, so, and a lot of you guys have played a lot of golf, but the ones who have, I know, if you're anything like me, how much joy you get out of playing golf, and it's a thing you can play your whole life, and it's worth putting effort into. So if you think golf's too hard and too boring, and then it's not the sport for you. But it's such a great game, played on such amazing places and you can travel. You can get on your motorbike and go around the world and find courses that you can play golf, good and bad, in all sorts of places. So it's an incredible game to travel with. You meet incredible people. Golf clubs are great places. When people talk about clubs struggling, and it's true. I mean, Melbourne's a tough market. I'm going to budge on a little bit here, but Kingswood and Peninsula, a controversial merger. The locals in Denley don't like it, but they were the ones who started it. The problem is because they were the ones who were forever complaining about the golf halls, which led to the golf course, which was a very good one in 1972, finishing up being not a particularly good one in 2018. And it became the 12th best golf course within a 20-minute drive of Royal Melbourne. So, Graham, when you were running your business, if you were the 12th best business in the street doing the same thing, you probably weren't going to last very long.
Correct.
So it's a tricky situation in Melbourne because we've got so many tremendous courses in this area. And at a time when fewer and fewer people are joining clubs, then why would you join the 12th best one when you can probably, if you know some people, you can join Victoria or Metropolitan or Kingston Heath, or you won't have to wait as long as you will have to wait to get into Royal Melbourne. But so the clubs they're going to be relying on good architecture, I think, which is my conflict of interest, because I've always argued that if a club's showing off great architecture, it'll be all right. So places like Spring Valley, which is I took a Canadian friend of mine who works for Gil Hanse, who built the Olympic course in Rio. Whenever we did that, 2016 the Olympics, so Gil was building that in 2014. And we took this 29-year-old guy from Canada, Josh, and he went to Spring Valley, and he got into an argument with a guy in the pub who asked him what were his favourite courses in Melbourne. And we went to Royal Melbourne and Kingston Heath and Metro and Victoria and a bunch of courses and St Andrews Beach, and asked him what his favourite courses in Melbourne, and he went Kingston Heath, Royal Melbourne and Spring Valley. I love Spring Valley. I thought Spring Valley, and he got this massive fight with this guy. I thought Spring Valley was a terrible golf course. But if you live in a city where you think Spring Valley is a terrible golf course, you're unbelievably spoiled, because it's a fantastic golf course. There was a Canadian guy who saw for its few faults, he saw all the great parts about a golf course that people don't pay much attention to. So that's why it's a tough market, because you've got places like Spring Valley, which are a tremendous golf course. It's not the 12th best course within 20 minutes of Royal Melbourne, it's probably the 8th best. But it'd be the 3rd or 4th best course in Sydney, the 2nd best course in Brisbane and Perth, and the best course in Hobart. So Melbourne's a tough place, but you've got to be good to survive, which is a good thing. It's competition. So I think that's a good thing. But the future has been, Brian Simpson was Alec Kennersley's assistant, correct? At Easton, where I started to play golf. My parents bought a house over the back fence, just jump over the fence and get on the 8th tee in 1 minute. And Alec was the pro, and Mel Humphries was about to be the assistant pro, and his dad was the greenkeeper. And if you want to talk about growing golf, my mate and I wanted money to buy a fish pole. So we figured we'd go and caddy, we could make it. So we turned up on Tuesday, and Mel said, wrong day, ladies' day, come back tomorrow. So we came back tomorrow, Wednesday, and we got hired, and we made $1, and I caddied a little bit, and there were some clubs in the, and I got to know Mel. This is over a course of a month, maybe, 3 weeks. I was playing golf, and I remember he said, look, just jump the fence, you'll be fine, keep out of the other members. And so I did that one. And about the second time I did it, I saw this car driving up, that I'm in trouble here. And it was Mel's dad, Merv. And he could have said, what the hell are you doing here? Get off the course, you know, you're not a member. And he said, just stay out of the road, just stay out of the road of the members, you'll be fine. So if you want to talk about growing the game, that's how you grow the game. That's what you do. You're kind to kids, and you let them play. And you know, Jeff Ogilvy started playing golf because he caddied at Royal Melbourne. And as a caddy at Royal Melbourne, you could play the golf course. And he joined Cheltenham and he joined Victoria. And you know, they're great environments for kids to be around. And that, you know, if we continue to be kind to kids and let them play and let them get away with wearing some clothes that we mightn't agree with and behaving badly occasionally, because that's what kids do, then that's how you grow the game and make the future of the game bright and good. So it's good architecture, it's friendly clubs. It's the other big change that's happened, which is significant, I think, which one was I was involved with, but was the introduction of great public golf in Australia. In America, for extortionate amounts of money, you can play Pebble Beach. I think it's a green fee, $500, but you have to stay at the hotel, so it's $1,000 to play Pebble Beach. But Pinehurst is extortionately expensive. But Mike Kaiser built a resort in Oregon called Bandon Dunes. Kaiser started a company with a university friend in 1972, recycled paper greetings, greeting cards. And he had 2% of the market, and he sold it for $750 million. And as part of his post-business life, he thought he'd build a golf course in Oregon and found a great piece of land and built it. And everyone, including my wife, told me I was completely mad. But she let me do it because, in her words, I thought I'd let him get it out of his system. And she said, the problem is now, the more courses he builds, the more money we make. So he's now got 4 courses in Bandon, 2 in Nova Scotia. He's about to build a 3rd course in Rome, Wisconsin, doing a new course north of Dornoch. And he wasn't the inspiration behind Barnbougle Dunes, but he was the guy who showed Richard Sattler how to do it. So Barnbougle became the first time in Australia, all of us, club members or not, could go and play a top 100 golf course in the world. In fact, 2 of them now. So you know, Richard built the 2 courses. Again, everyone told him he was crazy. Mike didn't invest any money, but he certainly emotionally underwrote it and said, if you run out, just give me a call. So, you know, public golf had never been particularly good in Australia. It served its role, but the courses were never great. So and Duncan Andrews, or Colin Campbell really started it. Colin Campbell built Cape Schanck, which was okay. But he was the first guy to realise, before there was a freeway to the Mornington Peninsula, that there was great land down there and it was cheap, and that was going to be a big part of the future of golf in Melbourne. And Colin went down there and dug that thing out by hand with his old Mercedes and his tractor and his mower, and you know, he built Limestone Valley, which became the Dunes, which Duncan Andrews bought, which really became the first tremendous public golf course in the area. I mean, and then St Andrews Beach was built. So public golf, and it's one of the reasons that club golf perhaps struggles, is that there's now great public golf. So you don't have to join a club. Anyway, that's there were clubs, the Eastern Mile clubs, now a housing estate. I moved out to Croydon, which is next to Lilydale. Yeah. So Croydon, which was did the same thing 7 years earlier. Ewing Meadows, Eastern. Kingswood sold Burswood Peninsula. We're now redoing Point Lonsdale, which had been a struggling club for that when we first did a plan for them in 2002. We're just starting now, so we, unlike tea towels for 6 for $20, which is 6 for $2 or £2. When we signed the contract in 2002, we're just starting now, so it's the lead time's a little different from selling tea towels. But Point Lonsdale sold 4 holes, which I think were worth $40 million. So that's another way to get out of, that was a struggling club. Another way out is if you're lucky enough to have some real estate you can sell and some real estate next door you can buy. Lucky enough to have a great piece of farmland that looked exactly like the golf course, then that's another way out of. So clubs are going to need to be smart, be inventive and pick the right bits of land, make the right choices, not spend too much money on clubhouses, and they're the ones that will do well in the. If you're talking about going back to China, they're looking at stuff for the 100 years, not the next committee meeting or the next election. So anyway, enough from me. So you've probably got some things to ask where we can go where things that might interest you more than my area of expertise. So if anyone has any questions, can we fly away at that?
Well, I'd like to ask you a question first, if I can. Michael, you talk about public golf.
Yes, Jeff.
I didn't know which one to use. You talk about public golf, and we've got these great courses down the peninsula. But what about public golf within the suburbs? Has it got a future in it? We've got sand in there, of course, and you're involved.
It's about to dig up, yeah.
Yeah. But is that going to be the future? A quicker, smaller.
Well, public golf. I mean, I jumped the fence at Easter, but that was after the members were out of the road. So my mate, we used to go to. It was called Bulleen Public Course. They had a caravan, 9 holes. It's now freeway golf, I think. Had a caravan. It was 30 cents for 9 holes, 40 cents for 18, and it was a bad course. But we didn't know that. We didn't care because we were playing golf. So clearly, and that was where I started across from Eastern and freeway. So there's clearly a role for public golf and for people who aren't members of clubs. My point would be that the better the golf course, the better they're going to do. And the more people are likely to be attracted to the game by playing courses that are really good. I think if everyone could play at Royal Melbourne. If Royal Melbourne was a public course, and that was your first introduction to the game, you'd think it was the greatest game in the world. That'd be like skiing the best mountain in the world, or climbing the coolest rock, or water skiing or surfing on the best, you would fall in love with whatever you did if you played golf at Royal Melbourne. So I think the role of the public and they also been shut. That was a dreadful golf course in the end. I think it should have been some golf there. They could have built anyone who's seen the Himalayas putting green at St Andrews, massive, cool, it's called the women's putting course. Would have been amazing to build something like that there. So you don't need to be any good at golf to putt. And for kids, it's a much better version of golf than mini golf. So it was sad to lose all the golf from Elstonwick. Yarra Bend's a pretty decent golf course. The problem is with a model that someone takes the lease from the council, pays the council money and takes the money for the green fees. So they don't ever invest any money in the golf course because 1, that means closing it, 2, that means spending money, and 3, they probably can't put their green fees up by $20 to recoup their costs. So no one has invested any money in Yarra Bend or Brighton or Sandringham or the rest of it, ever, or Albert Park, which is dreadful. Ever. So 50, 60, 70 years after they were built, there's never been any improvements to their architecture. So Albert Park, which is a massive fight about Albert Park, it's a bad golf course in an incredible area. Give whoever wants it 50 acres. Give 10 acres to some developer, let him build some, make some money out, and use the money and make a great 9-hole course. You can make a really good 9-hole course there. And I think a great 9-hole course. If someone said to me, for the rest of your life, the only holes you can play are the first 6 at Royal Melbourne or the first 6 at Kingston Heath, that'd do me fine. And it was funny, we were at a meeting, a public consultation meeting in Sandringham, because part of the proposal was to make it a 12-hole course, because they're taking 2 holes off Sandringham for the AI, for the Golf Australia High Performance Program. You can argue the rights or wrongs of that, which we won't hear, but they lose 2 holes. One chance was to build a 12-hole golf course, which I thought was actually the best idea. And there was a lady up the back and she sniffed at that suggestion and said, well, is there any precedent for 12-hole golf? I said, well, apart from the first 12 British Opens at Prestwick, which were 12 holes, yeah, there is. So, but that was one possible solution. I thought that was the best solution to Sandringham. Make it a great 12-hole course, because 53% of the rounds are 9 holes anyway. So anyway, but I think the better you can make public golf, the better it's likely to attract kids to the game. And my mother-in-law plays. She plays at Brighton. She's 86 years old. She plays twice a week. She doesn't care about playing a role model. She wants to play golf with her friends. It's the same as playing golf with her friends is the same as going to the coffee shop and having coffee with her friends, or walking their dog on the beach with her friends. You know, it's a social thing they do together, and there's a great role for public golf. But it can be better than it is, but it's going to require some money. That's a long way around there. Is that a long way around there?
No, because
Easy question?
I was going back into the Sandground question, and what's the timeline on that at the moment?
Well, it partly depends on what happens on Saturday. But because the Premier has been amazing for golf, he's put a lot of money into golf. So they need to practice fairway done and open for the President's Cup. And they're the current first and ninth hole. So we need to be started early in the new year. But we need more money. So we'll see what happens on Saturday. They're cryptic, but anyway.
It's not a problem. Any other?
Mike,
Keith?
a professional golfer told me it's terribly difficult to get young girls to play golf. What's being done proactively to encourage schoolgirls to play golf?
Not much. Well, there's a My Golf on the sign outside Sandringham. There's a Menji Lee's the My Golf ambassador. It's hard to get girls to play golf. They think it's the worst game ever. Don't they? Has anyone got, I'm going to say daughters, but granddaughters, and do they all think it's the most boring game ever that old men play because you all play it? That's kind of my experience of, you know, it looks like it's difficult. Most of the good players when I was a kid came out of the country, because country golf golf clubs were more likely to, you know, the families went to the golf clubs, that was what they did. So it's never going to attract many young girls, I don't think, in this country. It's not the sport of choice for young girls, and the perception is that it's played by us, and golf clubs are intimidating place, and it's a hard game. But in Korea, who dominate women's golf now, I spent a lot of time with a girl called Se Young Yu, who's not a girl anymore, but her first tournament on the LPGA Tour, she won the US Open, ranked 3 in the world, great player. And she said, golf in Korea for young women is the #1 sport they play. They dominate the world of golf, and above, I mean, they don't have netball, but if you use the equivalent sports in Australia, whether it was netball, basketball, swimming, athletics, dance, whatever girls do, young 11, 12, 13-year-old, 14-year-old girls do in Australia, their equivalents in Korea, golf is the sport they pick. So they get the best athletes. They dominate the world. You know, they're seen as being incredibly successful, and success breeds success. So comes a cost. The ones who don't make it, it's tricky, but you know, because they're incredibly dedicated and they pour thousands of hours into being great players. And we only hear about the ones that are good, but you know, and clubs could be more friendly. I mean, I have this argument with my wife on occasion. She's a vehement disagreeer with me, but I think women are.
That's actually a very strange wife you've got.
Well,
no, I can't help you.
no, that's true. But you know, my argument is that women at golf clubs don't help much. They're sometimes their own. They're sometimes the worst enemy of the game. They get so pedantic about the rules and how you behave and what you wear, and they don't necessarily create friendly environments for young girls to go into.
Very correct.
So you know, if your skirt's 2 inches too short, or you wheeled your buggy on the green by mistake, or you know, just do what Merv Humphries did. You know, be kind to kids. But I think the problem is that it's not a sport that even goes across their radar. And how you do that is a big question.
Robert Kerr?
Mike, you've been quoted a couple of things. First was that you like to see every green off the tee.
No, wrong. Misquoted. Next.
And secondly, we might like to discuss it then.
Yep.
Secondly was that you don't want to have to consult members when you're changing their golf club. Can I just ask a third sort of supplementary?
Yeah.
Peninsula is spending $14 million on the courses since they've sold Kingswood. And some of that money may be going to correct some of the work you did a few years ago. Would you?
Three good questions. The first one, I want to see the green. No. Why would I have ever written it? My favourite hole in Australia, arguably one of the best holes in the world, is the 6th at Royal Melbourne. So But a hole like the 8th of Victoria, where Peter Thompson's thrown that tee with me once and said, when I was a boy, you could see this green from the tee. And there was a beautiful view through to the green, blocked by some trees that were planted long after the hole was built. So if there were trees blocking your view through to a green that it would be worth seeing if you could see it, then that's what I've said. So, you know, there are a bunch, I mean, Royal Melbourne's, I think, you can argue it's the best course in the world. Certainly, and everyone, I've been asked this question a million times, what's your favourite course in Australia? It's Royal Melbourne's by far. And how many holes are there at Royal Melbourne where you can't see the green? 1, no, 2, 3, 4, 6, 11, 12, 17, 18. So for my favourite course in the world almost, there's 8 greens, 8 holes where you can't see the green. So that's my answer to that question. Second was, what was the second one?
You don't like, you wouldn't consult members about changes to their club?
Well, if anyone's ever been to any of the tens of meetings we've gone to with every club we deal with, speaking to members about changes to the golf course, then that you would see that was a silly proposition because we spend forever consulting with members of golf clubs. I'm not sure what, there'll be a follow-up to that, I assume.
I heard you being interviewed after the Ladies Open at Royal Adelaide, and I think it was.
Yeah.
Someone, I think you actually made that statement, so.
Well, I never would have said that, but because we're forever consulting with, we're forever having meetings with members. And I'm trying to think where to go with this. No, well, one, it's not true.
I think you could refer to any club captain. They probably get a lot of advice from the members as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we spend more time with the clubs we work at than anyone. You know, we spend forever at golf clubs talking to members. And well, I got into a long discussion / argument with a member about the 17th green at Victoria the other night, about a month ago with Steve Agar, about why the bunker at the back was going so far back. So we spent 2 of us, Steve Agar and I, spent 45 minutes with one member discussing the back bunker at the 17th of Victoria. So I think I spend more time than anyone talking to members about. So, no, and the third one was, we're fixed, no. Well, Peninsula, the North Course, I don't think, was it in the top 100 in Australia when we redid that course in 2000?
Probably was, yes. But
Just.
it never reached the top 100, top 10.
Well, but it went from maybe 90 to 20, or 15 or 20. So we did a pretty good job there. And the South went way up in the rankings, and they were much better than.
I'm thinking of the 8th in the South and the 17th, which have been changed completely.
Well, you're allowed 2 screw-ups, aren't you?
Sorry?
I said, aren't you allowed 2 screw-ups? Well, no, the 8th wasn't a great green. I thought 17 was fine. I didn't have a problem with 17 at all. I thought 8 was fine. But, you know, in fairness, we did the North Course, we did half the greens, perhaps more than half. And the South we did about half. So this project was as much about the agronomy of having, so there were original Morpeth greens there were Thompson greens there were Watson greens, I think there was a Watson green left, there was a bunch of our greens, all requiring different management, different grasses, different management, different profiles. So a huge part of that job was to re-profile every green and re-grass it, one with the same profile, 2 with the same grass. So a big chunk of the money was on agronomy largely. But I thought, oh, we did a great job with those 2 courses. I mean, they're better now. And you would hope you were better 18 years after you first did a job, you were better at what you did than we are now. And in fairness, it's Mike Cockney's job. I mean, Bruce Grant and I did the first job. So, you know, and Mike's a better architect than me, which is why he's my partner. So,
I could have to agree with you. Both courses are terrific. And
yeah.
I hope
Anyhow,
people play them.
that's enough on Peninsula. We
No,
can
that's
get Graham?
But they're good questions, I like those questions.
It still works, does it? I'm not in the head. Michael, perhaps you'd like to extend your thinking in relation to the combination of a lot of golfing bodies that will be based at Sandringham, and therefore your opportunity of redesigning, cutting it back in length to a certain degree will certainly be a focal point of attention to all the better players that will come out of junior ranks. But I'd like to just give thought as to how many different golfing bodies will actually have their headquarters at Sandringham. Do you know? And I mean,
Well,
Australian Golf Union, Big Golf.
Golf Victoria technically doesn't exist anymore, I think. Is that right? They merged with Golf. So it's now Golf Australia.
Correct.
So Golf Australia is there, and a whole pretty much everyone who worked for Golf Victoria now under the what do they call it, One Golf, or whatever they call it now, except for New South Wales and West Australia. So they're all there. So it's probably a sensible thing to have them all in one office. I'm not sure whether it's a great idea to have them all in. I'm not sure why they need to be all at Sandringham, but anyway, that's what they're doing. So, but it makes sense to. I mean, golf is incredibly over-governed in Australia. I mean, we used to have the VLGU, the Victorian Golf Association, the PGA, and there were 3 different pluses. Were there more than that? The women, the men, the Pete. So clearly, it should be, for a small place with decent. I mean, not that many golfers. It's not cricket or football. It would make more sense to have one governing body rather than 3. So we're getting closer to that. So that's a good thing.
Well, you can't make up at nine on bloody governments, let alone golfing bodies.
But of course, it'll be shorter, which is arguably a good thing. As long as it's better, it needs to make it better. Length should. People are getting help about how the course is being shortened. I walked around there quite a bit and didn't see too many people shooting 67. So
Andrew?
Mike, when I first joined Victoria, the 6th hole at Victoria was played out of a shoot. Do you remember that?
Mm.
Do you prefer it the way we're playing it now?
That's a loaded question.
It was such a hard hole.
Oh, we don't want to change it again, Andrew.
I wish I had a picture of that, how narrow that chute was coming out of there. There are a lot of members here, so I might be misquoted. In terms of, you said that at Royal Adelaide. If it was me in an ideal world, the tee would go back where it was. Because the original tee was way to the right of where it is now. In an ideal world, I like the tee where it was, and we wanted to do that, but there are a whole pile of trees there now that we planted in front of that tee. Take more trees out, make it a dogleg, and reshape the bunker to make it a diagonal carry across the bunker. So anyone who knows the 5th at St Andrews Beach, make it a bit like that. But no one wanted to. So in terms of consulting with members, no one wanted to have the trees out, so we moved the tee to the right. But it was no good the way it was, because you couldn't see the bunkers from the tee. It was a tiny narrow chute you drove out of. So it's a better hole now. Is it as good as it can be? Probably not. But that's a question for the members. I mean, we can only tell the members what we think, and they can choose whether to take our advice or not. And most they do, but not always, and that's fine. So Jeff was on the committee when we made that decision. So, but personally, I think it's a better hole to have the tee offset, reshape the bunker. But it was no good the way it was, because clearly the original the intent of that hole was to see the bunkers from the tee, and you couldn't see them anymore. So anyway.
Mike, I'm no golfer, but I'm interested in what, apart from the cosmetics, what is it architecturally that makes a great course or a poor course? A couple of pointers.
What makes it great? Well, great courses out there. Well, beautiful construction.
That's cosmetics, though.
Well, no, that's architecture. So Alison Mackenzie was talking about, because before Mackenzie, it was dreadful, ugly construction. And he was a camouflage expert in the Boer War. And he was amazed at how the Boers could hide themselves behind the man-made fortifications that looked entirely natural. And he applied that theory to golf. So he was the first to talk about building beautiful features. So a huge part of architecture is making man-made construction look like it belongs. Which is why Royal Melbourne is such an amazing piece of architecture, because there's nothing that doesn't look natural there, yet it's entirely man-made. So a huge part of the architecture is picking the great green sites and building beautiful greens and making them fit with the land, building beautiful bunkers, and making it look like it's not been squashed by the hand of man. But I mean, Royal Melbourne, if you want to know what makes a great golf course, you would use St Andrews, Royal Melbourne and Augusta, which are the same golf course, they just look different. There are choices to make off the tee, there's lots of space, there's almost no rough. There's a great mix of holes, great confounding like the 15th at Victoria, the great confounding 12th at St Andrews, the great confounding short par 4, where every time you play it you wonder what the right club and what the right shot is, because that always varies on the conditions or the wind or how you're playing, or great par 3s, interesting par 5s. Yeah, there were lots of things that go into and great pieces of land. Although there were, they're playing the World Cup at Metro this week, my club, but no one would describe that as a great piece of land. It's sand. The front nine's on sand, but the back nine's not. But and it's dead. It's almost not dead flat, but it pretty much is. So that's a great piece of architecture on a pretty dull piece of land because but they built it around beautiful construction and building interesting holes. But Victoria's a much different place because it's that back nine's got. Well, it's the opposite of Metro. It's got so much great undulations. So, but when you have a flat piece of land like Metro, it doesn't matter how you route the golf course. They could have literally routed that golf course. They could have put the first tee on the 18th green and gone backwards around the whole thing, and it would have been just as good. But you couldn't do that at Victoria because you can't. It just doesn't work that way. Well, the first hole of Victoria would be pretty good from the 18th green, back up top of the hill and down to the 17th green. So it's always interesting to try and figure out, imagine playing the whole...
Well, there's enough going on in Victoria at the moment, don't you?
Because the original course at St Andrews, of course, they played it backwards in the winter. So it got smashed in the summer so that, the divots turned into a pocket in where the bulk of the players drove it. So in the winter they would play it from the first tee to the 17th green and then go from the 18th tee to the 16th green and go around backwards. And if you look at the 12th hole at St Andrews, it's a great hole from the 13th tee to the 11th green. It's an amazing hole. So when people complain about the 12th at St Andrews and all those blind bunkers, we'll go to the 13th tee and look back. And it's an unbelievable short par 4. So anyway, so does that kind of answer the question?
My question relates to the actual game of golf.
Good.
I guess I'm a fanatic.
Yep,
I
you
like
are.
my 18 holes. It takes 4 hours or 3 hours or whatever. We constantly hear of let's modify it, make the hole bigger, make it easier for the people who don't play golf. I get the people who do. I hear Greg Norman say the future is riding in a cart with the music blaring.
Well, he's our age and he takes his clothes off. Come on, really. No, Greg, no.
Honestly, the reality is you can have 1,400 members and they're going to have to pay a fair bit of dough
Yep.
to be able to play. Any more members and you won't all get on. So it's never going to be a game for 13-year-old kids other than teaching them the game and giving them access off peak times.
Letting them fall in love with
So
themselves.
where do you see the game of golf though? Do you think that we should be trying to modify it, whether it's for TV or for the people who don't play, who think they would want to, or for the armchair critics like that bloke who writes in Inside Golf?
Well, I'm the wrong guy to ask. I'm a traditionalist, so I like the... I mean, Robert Hunter wrote a great book called The Links. He was Mackenzie's partner in California. And he said the great attraction of golf is its maddening difficulty. So any attempts to... Saracen wanted a bigger hole in the 30s, and they tried it once, the same guy still won. So I think any attempt to dumb golf down is a horrible idea. And I think it can be... I think... as Australians, we're obsessed with competition golf. We should play more golf for fun without a scorecard in our pocket. And just go with your mates and play golf and don't worry about your score. Not every day, but I think we play too much competition golf. I played with a Canadian friend of mine, Ray Stewart, who won the Dunhill Cup for Canada in when it was a 3-man event, team event, beat Freddie Couples. Never been to Australia, came out, Victoria was shut, so we played Kingston Heath, Royal Melbourne, at Joe's, Sandwich Beach, Peninsula, somewhere else, another good course. Royal Melbourne. He said, how much do these places cost to join? I said, Royal Melbourne's fucking 13,000 a year to join, 13,000 to join and 5,000 a year, it's about the mark, isn't it? He's like, he left Melbourne thinking, one, we had the greatest golf courses in the world. I actually should have taken him to a bad course, just to show him that not every course in Melbourne's like this. But he thinks Melbourne's got the greatest golf courses in the world. And he said in Canada, the two main clubs where he lived in Vancouver, two main clubs where we live, $125,000 to join. And the same yearly fees as we have. So golf in Australia is staggeringly cheap for how great in Melbourne, for how great it is. When you think that there's a club, Sabonic, next to Shinnecock in the National, $1 million to join. Fry's had $750,000. Well, it's in New York, so those guys get those bonuses every year, but except when they screw the economy and don't get any. But so golf is, but yeah, dumbing down golf's a horrible idea, I think, because people who are going to be attracted to a dumbed down game are going to come and go. and you're left with the golfers who are, you dumb down game, you dumb down the game we love, Westerly, and now it's dumbed down. So golf's, and we hear about this grow the game stuff. I mean, people who want to grow the game are nearly always in the business of it. Manufacturers, mainly. And people whose businesses are impacted by the game shrinking or will be advantaged by the game growing. Right? So in some ways, you want to shrink the game, perhaps. And the best thing golf would do, in some ways, would have a great recession. You'd get away with this insane appearance money and the professional game, insane prize money funds. We did a podcast this morning with a guy from America, and he said, how long can the US PGA Tour keep putting on meaningless events for $12 million a week? Like, who cares who won last? I mean, Charles Howell won last. Well, I mean, really? I mean, the RSM Classic, $12 million. So anyway, is that kind of... Yeah.
Last one, Jeffrey.
My question relates pretty much to what you're saying. And when you talk about golf course architecture, everybody's always bitching about how far the ball's been hit.
Yeah.
And redesigning the courses for distance. Wimbledon, for example, a few years back, they dropped the pressure on the balls to actually do something so the game didn't get blown out of the water. I notice now that Jack Nicklaus and lots of people now are talking about saying, why don't we...
And have been for years,
Yeah,
Nicholas.
have been for years. There seems to be more people talking that and saying, why don't we have a ball that is decompressed for the pros? And because they have that in tennis. Is that something that you think might happen?
Hopefully. I mean, I've been kind of loudly screaming about it for years, but and the problem is that Victoria, when the Open comes there in 4 years, we'll see that every par 4 in the back nine's a wedge shot, pretty much. And the 8 is too. So that's the problem, and every course is the same. Metro's the longest course in Australia now, probably, but it'll be really short, and you can't believe how far these guys hit it. So it's a problem. I was with the captain of the RNA. We were walking around last week, watching Grant Snedeker and Anaban Lahiri and Cameron Smith, and we got talking about the ball, and his question was, what do we do about Titleist? Which is like the Australian government trying to make a health policy in 1970 saying, what do we do about Philip Morris? It's the exact same question. You've got this powerful lobby group who don't want the ball changed because they're the dominant player in the market, and they're going to threaten to sue the RNA and the USGA out of existence, as Carsten Solheim sued the RNA and USGA over the Groove rule 30 years ago. But it's clearly madness. The big game changer, hopefully, is Cameron Champ. Who's seen Cameron Champ play? Cameron Champ now averages 340. So the history of the game is from all the way through from Ted Ray in the 1910s. Ted Ray to Sam Snead to Nicholas to Daly, Woods, Koepka, now Champ. History of golf is that freak in one generation becomes the norm in the next. And the RNA have said, well, we think it's stable now, but if there's a significant increase in the future, then we're going to do something about it. Well, Champ's now 20 hours longer than Koepka. And if history repeats itself all the way back to Ted Ray, then 20 years' time, there's going to be 50 guys who... And America is such a horrible place to have the debate because it's so dumbed down. And because they're so dumb. And which is not fair, it's a generalisation, but they think that if the Nicholas said pull it back 10%. So the average American golfer thinks that you're taking 30 yards off Dustin Johnson and 30 yards off me. Well, off, Mrs. Ball, she's not losing anything. So, and I'm not losing much because I didn't pick up much. But the problem is they don't want to bifurcate the game. They don't want to have two sets of rules. I think there should be a rule for the top players in the game, pros and amateurs, as there was when there was a big ball and small ball for about 5 years when both were legal. And then you can. The problem with their position, I think, is that they don't want to bifurcate the game, as in they don't want to have two sets of rules. But in having one rule, they have two completely separate games now. They're entirely unrelated. I mean, how many people in Victoria hit wedges for their third shot at 18? There's got the Australian Open unless it's into the north wind, every guy in that field had a wedge or 9 on that green. And that wasn't what the guys who built that golf course wanted. So how do you respect where's the respect for the great guys who built all the great courses? And Hickory obsoleted every 6,000 yard golf course. And Steele and Bellada made the fight between the player and the course pretty relevant for 70 years. And the Pro V came out in 2000, long graphite shafts, frying pan heads. Now it's madness. Anyway.
We'll still get around. Dick, could you do me a favour? Thank you very much, Mike.
Was it okay? Did it make any sense?
Oh, look, you could go for a few marks. You probably saved my day.
Mike, it's my great honour to thank you for a very, very entertaining talk. As you know, I've heard you many times.
Too many, Robert.
And you have a different slant every time, and this was no different today. And I loved your bit about climbing over the fence and the kids getting into the game, because that's exactly how I got into the game at your course at Metropolitan, playing every night after school, after the members had gone through.
But they should take the fences down. We had this. A lot of courses take the fences. Be like St Andrews. They take the fence down.
Yeah, and that's right, and that's how it was. And there's general feeling that a lot of the clubs, the juniors are no value, you know, because they play and then they leave.
Well, it's true they do,
but they come back again. Yeah, and that's the thing that they miss the point on. Unless you've got juniors coming through, where do you get your future golfers from? And I think you covered that pretty well there on that, and a few other points which were fantastic, and you could go on for quite a while rehashing some of the things you've said, and the ball and all that, which is very pertinent, and it's a different game. I think you agree that for our members who are all getting older, they can't compete with the young fellas. When you play with them, they just hit the ball so far. It's frightening, really. But Mike, thank you very much,
Thanks,
and appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you.